when we met him at first, he was traumatized by what had happened to him with Metallica. I mean, it cut him deep. He was cut deep by the way they did it more than anything else. I think us coming in contact with him so short of a period of time after that had happened, we got to see that when it was still pretty raw. And I think he maybe even still to this day maybe hasn't recovered. I think he was hurt deeply by the way they treated him. And I think that if nothing else, exacerbated his cynicism about things. Frankly, to be honest with you, probably contributed to some of his musical brilliance in a way. Because let's face it, you can think anything you want about Dave. You can love him, you can hate him, or you can be indifferent. He's a brilliant musician. He's a great songwriter, and he's written some music that's incredibly sophisticated over the years. Okay, I think some of that drove him to it.
The David Ellefson Show. Featuring Grammy Award winner David Ellefson and respected metal journalist Joshua Toomey. Presented by EllefsonEmporium.com. Here's David and Joshua.
The Open, the U.S. Open's been here once, I think once or twice before, and I got gifted like Sunday tickets to it. Wow. And I went by myself. I was like, I got to go check this out. And I kind of sat at one hole and watched, Tiger come through and like, just to say you did it, and I'm like, it was a very cool experience to kind of just be around that crowd. Obviously going to metal shows and things like that, you don't really get that kind of aspect of, the golf crowd, but it was a fun day. I'm a big sports fan. So,
the trip or I should say the trip, one of the things that's really cool about the PGA Tour, there's no other like top tier entertainment level, anything, sports, music, other types of entertainment where you can get that close to the players. I mean, you can get right up with them. Sometimes you can even talk to them. I mean, I was at a tournament at La Costa one time when we lived in San Diego, and I forget the guy's name now, but I was at the Tournament of Champions. So everybody who played had to have won the previous year on the tour. Right.
Right.
And one of the players, I went to take a piss, and I go to the porta potty and I'm ready to go in, and sure shit, one of the players comes walking out of the porta potty right in front of me halfway through it. It's like, oh, hey man, hey, good luck. And another time, a buddy of mine, we took his son out there, and he's black, right? And you don't see very many, especially black kids out at PGA Tour, events. So Brazel and I went, and he brought his son along, and man, Tiger Woods like walked with him. He was talking and chatting with him, chatting him up all the way through like I'd say like the last 6 holes of his round.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
just
nice.
golden, really cool to the kid. Gets up there, he gets done with his round, and we go up there, and he's trying to find something to give him an autograph on. It was just, I mean, you can get close to the players. That's what's so very, very cool about it. Especially if you golf, you can get a good look at what they're doing. I mean, I remember standing behind Tiger Woods, 6 feet away with my belly up to the rope, just watching him bomb it, going, holy.
That's when they're on a different level, man.
Yeah, seriously. But anyway, yeah.
So speaking of golf, by the way, welcome to the show, Greg Handevidt, my childhood friend, Joshua Toomey, my co-host here. So, Greg, I wanted to bring you on because we have a long history, not only meeting over our love of Kiss, I think in the 5th grade hallway at Riverside Elementary, but we moved to LA together. You and me started Megadeth together with Dave Mustaine. So I want to get into all that. So, funny thing. So we're talking about golf because you're watching the British Open today. So that's just historically when we filmed this. So, it's funny, I took up golf in I think senior year, right? I played out at the Jackson Country Club. I took up golf just because, I wasn't going to fucking, I'm going to play football. I'm not do anything to hurt my hands, hurt my body. And, because I knew I was, we played, right? We had, we had bands and stuff going up. So I just knew this is the easier, softer way right here, playing golf to try to letter in some kind of sport or something, right? But I wasn't that good. And then I moved to Arizona in 1993, took up golf again because all Megadeth, we moved out there. And so me and Dave were out playing golf and, still wasn't that good. I can hit straight. I just can't hit very far, but I definitely hit straight, which is good, So if I'm playing in a scramble, I'm good,
We played one time when you were living in Phoenix. You and I went out over there in some muni course. I remember we played golf.
Yeah, there's like 300 to choose from. In fact, we have well, it was called the Phoenix Open, but now it's the whatever the brand is, the some garbage, whatever the corporate sponsor. Yeah, exactly. But I remember standing there at the kind of the main stadium, hole there, right, where everybody's hanging out, and it's a bunch of yuppies and rich people getting drunk and hanging out. It's kind of like going to like the Kentucky Derby or something, but a banker friend of mine got me some tickets. It was the year Megadeth broke up, actually, in 2002. And so he said, "Hey, let me take you out." I was pretty bummed. It was a bummer couple, so he took me out there and hung out. But anyway, it's still better to rock, but yeah. So hey, so Josh is in the Midwest, from Nashville. He's at an undisclosed location at Hangar 18 somewhere in the Midwest, but
his bunker.
It is bunker, exactly. So, but thanks for coming on, and there's people writing Megadeth books. There's all this stuff going on, right? And it's we've come to an age, obviously, that that which didn't kill us only made us a little more famous, which is good. And me, Greg, I've always tried to bring you into the Megadeth story, even when we did the coffee company back in Jackson and stuff, because you were there. So, you're a great storyteller. So just, kind of your words, we had Taz, we had Killers, we had our, just talk maybe a little bit about our musical upbringing a little bit, and then we'll get to how we moved out to LA together.
Well, like you mentioned before, I moved to Jackson, which for anybody who doesn't know yet, which I'm sure you probably talked about it already, it's a dinky little town.
Mm-hmm.
David, you're out there, your dad's a farmer,
right.
Out on the farm. And I saw you with that KISS logo on your tablet. We're walking opposite directions in the hallway.
Yeah.
And I mean, hey, it's like there's a KISS brother.
Yeah. In this little town of 3,000 people. Yeah. And you were always loud. You were loud and got in trouble a lot. I was kind of like, it's meant to be a lead singer or a lead guitar player or both, but yeah, I remember there was just a brief conversation, KISS used Gibson guitars and Pearl drums, and then you filled in the rest of the statement or something. And
I think you said in Marshall amps,
something like that, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
So look, that's who we are, right? So today we're the black t-shirt crowd. We see us across the room, right? If you see some guy with his Maiden t-shirt on, you're kind of like, all right, that guy's cool. You see some dude with his Sabbath or Metallica shirt. It's like, okay, they're in the know, right? They're in the club. So look, you and me, we start playing together. We grow up in a little town of Jackson, sort of stars in our eyes. We just want to go off to Never Land and go be KISS and, do all that.
It all started with Alive, man. Alive.
It's Alive, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember being so you lived in town, so you had cable. Yep. I lived out on the farm 6 miles outside of town. We had like the UHF and VHF antenna. Right?
Exactly. And party line telephone.
Party line telephones, right?
Oh,
so
wow.
I'd go into your house and we'd watch the Midnight Special. We'd watch things like I remember seeing Rubicon with Jack Blades, who's now a Night Ranger.
Right.
Seeing Montrose play, Bachman Turner Overdrive, all this stuff that was coming out at that time. I always tell the story how me and my brother Elliot, we'd ride on the school bus, and the pastor's son would listen to WLSAM out of Chicago, and that's where he heard, Sweet, KISS, BTO, Foreigner, everything that was, even early Chicago, which wasn't heavy, so to speak, but it was
good.
Your stuff, Sticks, all this kind of stuff, right? So my mom, Frances, takes us to go see KISS, and I remember, fans turning around trying to give us weed because we're like kids. We're like, 13? This guy's trying to give us weed. It's like, no.
That's the first thing that pops into my head when I think of that show too. Is those guys, and you and I are like, huh?
Yeah. What's that?
We
don't smoke cigarettes. Oh, it's not a cigarette.
Yeah, exactly. No, we don't smoke.
The left-handed cigarette.
But it's funny. I've become friends with Mick Box from Uriah Heep, because Uriah Heep opened the tour, and Paul Stanley talked in his book about, I think there's something about, one of the band's girlfriends suddenly became his girlfriend, because that was the last night of that leg of the tour. Uriah Heep played, and then they left the tour, and the girl stayed behind or something. It's in his book. He talks about it. It's funny, right? But I've seen Mick a lot now, and it's so great to meet your heroes, get to know your heroes, become friends with, perform with your
heroes. Start a podcast with. Yeah, start a
podcast.
I get it.
Yeah. I remember, Greg, one time. So we'll get into this for a second, but I remember, we moved to LA. You come back. We'll talk about that in a second. But I remember we were on the Rust in Peace tour with Judas Priest or something, who are, our heroes. And I remember you go, dude, you made it. And I'm thinking, fuck, I'm like 6 months sober. I've buried in debt, tried to pay off my guitar tech makes more money than me. I'm living on, I have no credit cards because I had to clean up my credit because I spent it all on drugs. I'm literally living on a $20 a day per diem, and I'm living in an apartment in LA, and, all you see is here's the mighty Megadeth, Judas Priest. And, the reality of what's really behind all that is, the story of all that goes into building something to get there,
right.
And it's just, it's not what it's, and of course, after that, everything ended well because I stayed clean and saved my money and all as well. But yeah, up to that point was, it's amazing. It made me realize, getting famous is easy. Like, you can do all kinds of dumb shit and get famous, right? But making money and actually having a career is a whole other level,
Totally. I say that to people all the time because, I still have people obviously back here come up to me, hey man, Megadeth. And I'm like, well, I'm an attorney now, but yeah, that all in a life is kind of my answer. Yeah. But I tell people all the time, like, look, it's easy to get famous. It's easy to be known, have your name known. You do a few magazine interviews or something or whatever. And the next thing you know, you're famous, but it's hard to monetize it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no salary when you become famous. There's no, you still have to find a way to make money, even though you might be a household name.
Exactly. So, yeah, hey man, I know. Well, when we went out there, when we went to LA, we were all struggling around. We're doing telemarketing.
Dave Mustaine got us our first job doing solar energy, selling solar energy appointments.
Exactly.
So let's talk about that. So I remember very clearly, I was 16 years old, rehearsing in one of the sheds on the Ellefson farm, probably with our friend Lee Meacham and the gang we were running with our band, right? And I remember it hit me so clearly. I got to get to LA. This is it. I got to go to LA. I wanted to dye my hair blonde, get an earring, change my name. All right, I'm going tomorrow, And my parents are like, "Yeah, slow down there, little fighter," So, but they got behind it, As my mom and dad were supportive, And my dad even told me later in years. He goes, I pulled you away from doing a lot of any kind of farm work where you could have hurt your hands, like tractors and trucks and things where you could, because people would get their hands, augers, get your hand caught or rip an arm off. He had me do things like mow the lawn, clean the pool, like things like that on the farm, But your parents weren't maybe quite as eager, right? But somehow
that's a gentle way to put it.
Yeah, they weren't quite, because your dad is a lawyer, right? And he's become obviously we're all family friends. Right. And ironically, you would go on to follow, in a similar path of legal. But at the time, look, you were young. You totally had the rock and roll spirit, man. You were everything that fucking embodied rock and roll. Everything about you. And so we somehow convinced our parents we would go to MI, Musicians Institute. You would go to GIT, Guitar Institute. I'd go to BIT. To our two buddies, Brent and Brad from neighboring town, Wyndham. We all moved out there together. So we pack up the van. My dad gives us the van. We have U-Haul trailer. We pack up whatever gear, amps, PA, whatever we had. We threw it in the trailer, drove down the the lane of the Ellefson farm and wave goodbye to.
I think it was like 5 days, maybe 7 days after we graduated.
After school,
I mean,
I think it was 5 days. Yeah, we moved. And so we got out to California. So let's say we land there June 1st. So, we're the US Festival had just happened, which was huge. And I think part of it too, Ozzy was, and I told Rudy Sarzo this the other day. We had him here on the podcast, and I told him, I said, man, you and Randy Rhoads and all you guys who got into Ozzy's band, you guys made guys like me and Greg want to move to Hollywood, because that was where the action was. Suddenly through Jakey Lee, we knew about Rat and Rough Cut. Because of Randy and Rudy, we knew about Quiet Riots. Like, we knew there was a scene going on, right?
Well, Motley Crue kind of popped a couple of years too, when we were like seniors or juniors or seniors in high school, I think. So they
remember they were in Hustler magazine.
Exactly. That's where we discovered them, I believe.
We discovered them in Hustler magazine.
but they put that first record out. So it just, from our perspective, LA was the scene. It was really sort of LA or New York, but for us it was always LA. I think it was always Southern California where we wanted to get, because there were, we knew that vibe coming up, because all those guys that Ozzy had in his band, he'd sort of put that together out there in that scene. And, we could see the bands that were coming up. And at that time, that's what was moving us. That's what we wanted to be. Right. So, I think that's what drew us out there. Now, that was such a trip, pardon the pun, when we drove out there too, because and by the way, Josh, it's nice to meet you. I don't think you and I.
No, we're good. Yeah, no, we're good.
The night before we pulled into LA, I'll never forget as long as I live. We pull off the road to spend the night in Chino, and Brad, Brent, you and I all get out of the van, and we're all sitting around. There's a campfire out there, and all of a sudden, all four of us said, "Whoa, something feels weird. Something feels weird about this place. I don't know." And we all freaked out and piled in the van and locked the doors out of the van. "I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on, but something's weird." So the next day, then we hit the road. We get up in the morning, everything's fine. The next day we hit the road, we turn the radio on, and we're 15 minutes down the road. And it turns out that was the night of the Chino axe murders. that dude had, axe murdered an entire family in Chino that night when they were. It's like something. It's weird. There was just a vibe in the air there, and we all four of us felt it.
I do remember that. Yeah.
It was bizarre. We're driving. We're like, holy shit! We hear that on the radio. Like, oh my god, I can't believe that happened. Yeah, seriously. So that's the kickoff to our trip in LA. The next day we were in Hollywood.
Yeah. It was interesting, wasn't it? Because look, you and I Josh, I don't know, you're from, Nashville, right? From becoming Midwest area, right? So, but, I think probably for Greg and I and our generation, we grew up with these TV shows, Charlie's Angels, whatever it was, right? And LA had this appeal, palm trees, pretty girls, the beaches, it was just looked so desirable on TV. And then I remember when we got there, crowded, smoggy. I couldn't breathe the first couple months, man. My nose hurt so bad from all the smog. And I didn't even know there was a mountain range there, those hills behind, San Bernardino Mountains, because it was so smoggy. And, our van. So we move into 1736 North Sycamore, which was an apartment we had because the Elvira, I think, was the landlord. And she was from a neighboring town where me and Greg grew up called Mountain Lake, Minnesota. And so that was kind of our connection. So our parents, I think, were like, okay, this is good. The boys are going to school. There's kind of a local connection, right? Meanwhile, me and Greg are like going, we're ready to, burn them to the ground. But so talk about, so we get there, we move in, right? This dinky little apartment. You grew up in a big house. Your dad's a lawyer. You're comfortable. I grew up on a huge farm, very comfortable, both of us, right? And now we're living in this, little studio
one
apartment. One room, right? We're one room, Directly above us is this other guy we're about to meet. Next to him is where our friends Brad and Brent live. So talk about, the flower pot incident and meeting our upstairs neighbor who, this former Metallica guy.
Well, let me jump in real quick. Also, Greg, every time they talk about this story, they always talk about this is how David meets Dave Mustaine, but you're like, wait a minute, I was there too. And, there's all these like early on stories that are like, you're like, Greg was in the room too, but it's funny. Like this is the origin story of Mustaine and Ellefson, but you kind of get a front row seat to all of it too.
Well, I definitely had a front row seat. I think I had my fingers in it back then too, pretty much. I mean, the three of us were really trying to build something like the three of us as a band. I mean, at the time, well, I'll go back to what David said to talk about when we first get there. So we move into that apartment, and I think Gordon had arranged for that apartment. Hadn't he made a call to
somehow? Yeah, my dad. Yeah.
Right. So we had digs for when we got there. We had a roof over our head. So we move into this apartment, and David and I are like, we're from the Midwest. Hey, we wake up at 8 a.m, and by 9 we're jamming. Right.
Yeah.
Well, we would notice. I think the first thing that happened was the flower pot. Like a couple days after we're there, we're jamming at like 9 a.m. All of a sudden, this flower pot gets thrown down and it smashes on our air conditioning unit. And it turns out it's Tracy, Dave's roommate upstairs, threw a flower pot, and then she later came down and said, "Stop playing so early. You're driving me crazy." So she throws a flower pot down at us. So we're like, "Oh shit, sorry."
Right.
Yeah. Nice Midwest kids waking up the neighbors. Yeah.
Seriously. Raising hell.
Yeah.
But the next thing that really happens is we keep jamming. David and I are down there and we're playing, we're practicing. And we keep seeing what turns out to be Dave hanging out his window, listening to us, because the buildings were so close together that you could see the reflection of the other apartment windows upstairs when you looked out our window at the building next to us. Right. So we would see Dave hanging out the window, listening to us rehearse. Well, then I think we ran out of cigarettes because we wanted cigarettes. So we decide, hey, let's go up and knock on that dude's door. He looks like he's pretty, metal. He looks like a rocker dude. He's got long hair. He listens to us. Let's go up and knock on his door. So we go upstairs and we knock on his door, and I'll never forget the look on his face, because he thought we were like somebody trying to trap him in some weird, like, he thought we were reporters.
Right. Okay.
So he opens the door and we're like, "Hey, do you know where we could get some cigarettes?" and he looks at us like, what? He's got this look on his face like, "Who the hell are you?" But then he says to us something to the effect of, "Oh, you're the guys from downstairs, huh?" And we're like, yeah. And he's like, "Oh, okay. Tracy told me about you guys, So we ended up going in. Well, first of all, we went down to that little liquor store on the corner. We all walked down there. And of course, us being 18, we've got beer and cigarettes.
Yeah.
And we went
back. Being underage in Hollywood, because drinking age in Minnesota was even 19. I know it was 21. Yeah.
Yep, that's true. So we end up sitting up there with Dave like all night long. I mean, we sat up there all night and we threw back beers and just talked to him. And we really all just, I think we kind of hit it off at that point right there. We just kind of meshed. And when David and I left that day, when we went back to our apartment to crash out, whatever it was, we knew there was something there. Right. There was something special about Dave, about this whole situation that we'd fallen into, And
did he play you Metallica that first night? Like, "Hey, this is my old band," or anything like that?
I don't think he did. He was.
I think it was a couple days later we went up there and he was playing it. He had it
No
on
Life to Leather.
No Life to Leather. Yeah, he had it on the stereo or something. Yeah.
Yeah, because
which real quick, today is the 43rd anniversary as we record of No Life to Leather. I just saw that before we started recording.
Oh, shit. How about that?
So, well, just let me tell you,
back in the day.
Yeah. I was thinking about it with Dave because we didn't know him. We didn't know about Metallica because they were basically Metallica at that time was in upstate New York recording Kill 'Em All for John Zazula, right? And Dave would fill us in on the whole story about everything. And as it turns out, Dave literally had a year and a half in the life of Metallica. He was in the band about a year and a half. And what did we know? We didn't really know. Now we kind of put all the history together of it and everything. But I remember going up a couple days. Well, yeah. You even said we go back downstairs that night and you go, dude, we got to go play with that guy. And from what I remember, Greg, you actually started playing with Dave first because Dave was kicking around this idea of a band called Fallen Angel. There's a guy named Robbie that he was trying to work with who wasn't really of the same ilk he was a good guitar player, but wasn't of Dave's sort of musical style. I was teaching this kid, Matt Kisselstein, who's a kind of an 18-year-old kid from Beverly Hills, maybe 17, actually. He was a young guy.
Yeah, he was pretty young.
And teaching him how to play bass, basically, and how to learn the songs and stuff. And then, Greg, you started playing with Dave, and I think you actually brought me in to play bass with you two, right? As best I remember.
Well, yeah. Because what had happened was he listened to us, but I listened to him too. Mm-hmm. And Dave's up there and he's practicing this stuff. Well, I mean, it turned out to be like half of Ride the Lightning and, and a lot of what's on Killing Is My Business. And I mean, I think even some stuff that ended up on Master Puppets too, I think. But, so Dave's up there and I'm listening to him practicing and rehearsing his songs and writing, right? And I'm picking up his riffs. So I went to him and said, hey, let's jam, or something. And, I asked him to let's try jamming together. So I went up and I kind of rattled him a little, sort of blew him away because I had already learned a lot of the licks. So I was able to play him right away. He's like, what? And he said to me, what the hell, man? And I was like, look, I just been listening to you, I've been listening to you and I picked some of the stuff up. So I think I did that with him like twice. And then I said, dude, you need to get David in here. You need to get David playing bass. Cause Matt was a great kid, but like David said, Dave was literally teaching him to play bass. Mm-hmm. He did not know how to play. He'd never played before, but he looked good. He looked like a rock star. And so Dave's trying to teach him to play bass. Wow. I mean, I knew David is incredible. And he compared to now, even he was incredible back then, as incredible as he is now, well, he's more incredible now, but my point is he was a great bass player then. So I said, Dave, get David in here. And Dave's first reaction was, well, what about you guys, man? What about you? And I was like, look, well, that's what he said when I said jam with, when I wanted to jam with him. He says, well, what about you and David? And of course I'm thinking David's going to be playing bass here in a day or two. Anyway, so I was like, oh, no, don't worry. We've got an agreement, we're not going to stand in each other's way, blah, blah, blah. If something comes along. So I go and I jam with him and then I'm like, look, you got to get David in here. So of course David comes up and Dave's like, yeah, this is a real bass player. This is somebody who actually knows their instrument. And I from then on, I think it was hard for him to talk to Matt, but Matt was really a cool guy. And
he was,
I think he got it right away. But from that point on, the three of us, we were inseparable at that point.
And so Dave had a singer guy named Laura Kane, he kind of looked like a Jim Morrison guy, was again, kind of a bit out of Dave's vein of music. And I remember, Greg, we're listening to this music by now. We'd probably heard No Life Till Leather a couple of days later, right? And we go, fuck yeah, this is incredible. And remember, he had his blue tablet, because that blue tablet followed us around for quite a while, right? And it had lyrics in it. And he had the song No Survivors, which had the lyric, the Arsenals of Megadeth can't be rid, they said, right? And I remember you and I looked at that, and you looked at me and go, dude, this is fucking really good, And it wasn't great in like this poetic kind of way. It was great in a really simple, like, fuck, I could have written that, like, right? Didn't you feel like that sometimes with a lot of Dave's music? It had a thing about it that it's like, God, it's like, it's so simple, it's so clever in a simple way. It's like, fuck, I could have come up with that, but he did. You know what I mean? That was kind of the gift of it, I think.
For me, honestly speaking, for me, when we started first jamming with Dave and working the stuff up, my feeling was, fuck, this is what I want to write. I wish I was writing this stuff. This is the music that I feel, and that's why I say it kind of all meshed together really easily at that time, because I felt like Dave was writing the music that I wanted to write, that I wished I could write, that I wished would come out of me, And I think we all knew there was something there that was going to end up being really special. I remember at one point, I forget the conversation we were having, but Dave said to us, man, we could be the next Iron Maiden, and because Maiden was huge. Maiden had broken huge. Number of the Beast had come out. They were all of a sudden the arena metal band, and that was my gut when we first started out, was like, man, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be. This is the sound that, we've been trying to forge.
Right.
And Greg, you get the, in the lore of Megadeth, I mean, you get the credit for kind of saying, hey, let's not call the band Fallen Angel. Let's go with Megadeth. Do you remember kind of that day and kind of saying, hey, let's do this, and then maybe dropping the A and all that stuff?
I do. We were sitting down in our little apartment, and like David mentioned, Dave had read a pamphlet by Senator Alan Cranston talking about the arsenals of Megadeth. And I think that really triggered something in him about nuclear war and just how devastating it was and everything. And I remember thinking, holy shit, the arsenals of Megadeth. And he had that line in the lyrics, and it just occurred to me, Megadeth. I'm like, that would be a cool name for a band. And I sat down, and at the time, and I still kind of feel this way, although I don't know, my attitude about it sort of softened, but I was like, do you really want the word death in the name of your band? Do you really want that? It seems kind of negative karma-y to me back then. That's what sort of was in my head, So I sat down and I just wrote it out as one word, and I dropped the A out, and I just wrote it on a piece of paper. And I was like, I think this is cool. We could call the band Megadeth, one word. We take out the A. It's unique. It doesn't have any, sort of dark connotation around it. And I think people would see it and not be put off. It wouldn't put people off. And I think at that point in time, to sort of, I think, to break through in a commercial sense without just completely selling yourself out, I think there were barriers that would have, I'm not sure Capitol Records was ready to sign a band called, Death at the time, or, with that.
For sure.
And maybe not. But I mean, even when after all this, and I came back and I formed Kubla, and we were shopping demos around, we kept getting stuff back sent to us saying, this is way too heavy. This isn't commercially acceptable. We can't sign you. This would never sell, And Dave didn't like it. He didn't like it at first. I presented to everyone, and I remember Lars was like sitting over by the window, and you and Dave and I were like talking diligently about the band, and Lars sitting over there like looking out the window. But Dave didn't like it at first. It took him a couple of days, and then I remember a couple of days later he came back and he's like, yeah, this is growing on me. And that's sort of how it came about. I mean, that's a story. It was a quick little thing. And
yeah, because I remember we used to rehearse. Somehow by now we'd had Dijon Carruthers was in the band. We would go over, we'd drive past Forest Lawn over to Glendale, and we would rehearse. And it was basically you, me, and Dave and Dijon, because Dijon was really into Cozy Powell, and he loved Les Binks from especially the Stained Class album by Judas Priest. So there was a synergy there with that. He hung with his girlfriend Judy a lot, so he wasn't around always a lot as we were hanging. But yeah, I remember coming back to the apartment, and that whole idea came up about a band name. And I just remember you were sitting there kind of like looking around going, I think we should call the band Megadeth. And I remember Laura going, whoa, fuck, Megadeth, fuck, that's heavy, fuck, like, it's about the heaviest name at that time was Black Sabbath, and that was dark. And I remember the call to my mom and dad, we're talking one day, and it was the old, oh yeah, so how's school going? It's like, yeah, we decided not to go to school, one of those, the call, and we met this guy, and he was in this band Metallica, kind of giving him the whole backstory, they're immediately very skeptical, because people from the Midwest would go out to California and join religious cults and shave your head and become a loony, and we were always warned, don't get into one of those cults. And here we are starting one of our own called Megadeth, right? And and I remember, what's the name of the band? It's like Megadeth, like it was, how do you tell your parents you just started a band called Megadeth? Like, that's just completely, especially for the nice Protestant Lutherans of Jackson, Minnesota. It's just like, hellfire and fucking, denouncing your, birthright, and this kind of stuff. So, but, here's the other thing. So we move on, and I want to ask you this too. So, remember the day when Kill 'Em All shows up, right? So by the way, we've recently interviewed Metal Maria on here, right? Maria.
Oh, okay.
Maria, yeah. So she gave some great discussion points of her showing up out in LA. And so remember Kill 'Em All shows up, right? And we sat up, I think up in Dave's apartment. He had
in ours.
Was it in our apartment? We had the turntable.
Yeah, remember he came to the door. And he like threw our door open and came rushing in.
Because we had the turntable.
Yeah, exactly. He comes rushing in and runs over, because we had the turntable set up kind of over under the window. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
So
that's where I remember Bailoff and their manager Adam coming down. Actually, this manager coming down, and Bailoff sitting over in the corner like a little Buddha with the bong between his legs and fucking smoking.
Was Bailoff there when he brought Kill 'Em All in?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it was a different time. But yeah, Dave must have gotten a copy of it and needed a turntable. She comes running in the apartment. Okay.
Right.
Makes sense. Right. This is why I have you on the show, because I don't remember all these details. Somewhere between you and Metal Maria and not many other people were there. Like, this is exactly how it happened, Right. So remember Dave puts it on, and I remember it was like 42 minutes of complete silence, right?
Or him muttering expletives.
Yeah. He fucking stole my solo. He's playing my solo. Dave was very protective about the solos. So let me ask you this. So, Forest from the Trees, all these years later, what is your take on, them using Dave's songs, giving him credit? He got paid. I remember seeing royalty checks show up, not in recent years, but in the beginning, I remember, $5,000 shows up. That may as well have been $500,000.
Sure.
When you're fucking broke, and
I'll take $5,000 right now.
Yeah, exactly. We'll take it, but so checks would show up, and but more importantly than the money was, that gave credibility. I mean, so right for getting, I had many discussions about that with Dave too, about just, man, flip the script. How about gratitude? The fact that because let's face it, most people, if you're in a band, someone takes your song, you fight over it. It's like, oh yeah, we'll prove it. Prove it was your riff. Right. You know what I mean? They steal it.
That's what Dave said to me the first time I brought up the fact that I came up with the name. Sue me. That's what he said. That's what he said to me. So I was like, not like I was going to, but yeah, I mean,
exactly. So it could be argued many of us weren't treated the same way, even in Dave's own band. You know what I mean? So, and I'm not here to start a war about that. Cause like you said, you moved on, I moved on, whatever. At some point you just
water under
move
the bridge.
on. Right?
And honestly, Dave's always been good to me.
Right.
Since
he was. Yes, every time you'd come and see us in St. Paul, Minneapolis. Dave was always an open door for you. And exactly. Yeah.
He's always been good to me, but I've stood back and I mean, here I am.
Okay, so here's another one, because you were there for a couple months and then you ended up going back to Minnesota.
Yep.
And like you said, you started a band called Kubla Khan, put out a couple of records, and I know now there's another Kubla Khan out of Texas, and that sort of transition happened. So anyway, but so we're I think it was Wasp. It just got signed to Capitol Records. Rod Smallwood, Iron Maiden's manager, was starting to manage them. And me and Dave went down to the Troubadour, as we would from time to time.
Yeah.
And we went down to go see them, and suddenly we hear Lars and James are at the show.
Yes.
Right? So they're outside.
That was Wasp. That was a Wasp show.
I think it was Wasp. I think it was their last show. They're basically signing, and then then they went off and played arenas.
The only thing I remember about that night is running into James and Lars down there, and then going back to the apartment.
Right. Well, I just remember, Dave said, "Don't play him any of our music," right? And then then proceeds to pick up his guitar and play him all of our songs.
He does. We get back and grab his guitar, start playing the riffs. It's like, and I remember Lars sitting there.
Oh fuck. I just remember it's like, these guys seem pretty cool. Like, how could you not get along with these guys? But and here's another one. Josh, you probably got some questions too, and then I'll shut up. But again, Dave being in Metallica, I mean, dude, that was a huge leg up for getting Megadeth started, right? Because we'd go to clubs, people knew Dave, they recognized him, like he was, legitimately a rock star, in the making, right? And
local rock star for sure.
Yeah, exactly, right. He'd been around the circuit, in Southern Cal, right? So like sometimes people would see Dave, and they'd yell Metallica, and he took it like they're going, "Fuck you! You used to be a Metallica." I go,
always a cynic.
How can you possibly think that? It's like, you know what I mean? It's like if I see some guy go, "Fuck yeah, Megadeth," I don't take it like, "Fuck that guy." I'm like, I'm proud of it. It's like, yeah, exactly. That was my band. So it's and again, we're not here to cause problems and start shit, but there were challenges with working with Dave. He definitely saw things with the glasses the other way around. Sometimes he had a very different perspective that's, I think, probably you and I would go, "Oh my God, dude, like, how could you not maybe be more thankful for this?" You know what I mean? I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's true. I also, though, when we met him at first, he was traumatized by what had happened to him with Metallica. I mean, it cut him deep.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's part. I'm not a psychologist, dude. Like you said, I don't want to dig into Dave's head at all.
I know, but continue that thread, because you're right. Metal Maria's kind of said the same thing.
He was cut deep by the way they did it more than anything else. I think just us coming in contact with him so short of a period of time after that had happened, we got to see that when it was still pretty raw, and it cut him deeply. I think he maybe even still to this day maybe hasn't recovered from it. Although I've seen snippets of some interviews with him recently where he seems a little bit different. I don't know, but I think it hurt him badly. I think he was traumatized by it, and I think he admitted on Sean Ryan, I think it was not that long ago, that he was a mean drunk or something to that effect. And just being able to recognize that in someone's self, that's kind of turning a corner, because he was always a mean drunk. And I didn't know if that was because of what happened to him with Metallica, or if it was just because of, I mean, I think Dave has, again, I don't want to go all psychology on, but I think
childhood stuff. He's talked about it in his book.
Childhood stuff with his dad. And I think he was hurt deeply by the way they treated him. And I think that, if nothing else, exacerbated his cynicism about things. And frankly, to be honest with you, probably contributed to some of his musical brilliance in a way, because let's face it, you can think anything you want about Dave. You can love him, you can hate him, or you can be indifferent. He's a brilliant musician. He's a great songwriter, and he's written some music that's incredibly sophisticated over the years. Okay. I think some of that drove him to it. But yeah, I think you and I would have a different take on it. Like you said, I mean, you have people, yelling your band at you, you're going to get angry and feel, automatically default to they're fucking with me, right. And it, I mean, it's sort of, at times it seemed like that, but, yeah, that's kind of my take on what was going on with him back then, and what sort of played out over the years. Again, like I said, I've stood back and watched things that go on. I don't understand how he can sleep soundly at night, frankly, after what went down with you. Not just this most recent thing, which I think is just the dumbest bunch of garbage I've ever seen, especially in the world of rock stars.
Right.
It's like, what the hell? But I think the lawsuit, you and I talked frequently when that was going on. I think we talked almost every day there for a while about when that was happening. I don't think you were treated right when it comes to the property rights to Megadeth. I mean, how you can be completely cut out of that is beyond me. I don't understand it. Even if legally it could happen, which you and I have talked about all that way back then. To me, I'd cut you a piece. I'd cut you your share, even if legally I didn't have to, because it just seems like the right thing to do. When you put that much of your life and energy into something, I just don't feel like you should be carved out of it completely and left hanging, left nothing but a W-2 employee. It's just not right. So I think it all comes into play. I think he also has outside influences on it, but look, man, I don't know. I know, Dave a whole lot better than I do at this point. I mean, I haven't seen him since Dystopia.
Right.
So, or talked to him or anything. So, but I think he was angry. I think he's been angry. I understand why Metallica did to him what they did. I do. I mean, Dave's volatile. I mean, I remember in Minneapolis, you guys came through. Do you remember the whole screen thing? He broke the screen at First Avenue in Minneapolis, and he wanted to go beat up Peter Davis or something. I don't remember. We're there after the show, and Dave comes running up to me and goes, "Greg, come on, let's go kick this guy's ass." I didn't even know who he was talking about. I was just like, okay. So I mean, yeah. So I don't know. I guess that's kind of my take on how, what all went down. I think he was still reeling from that. And honestly, truthfully, Megadeth, from the time that we got together with them to the time that you guys got your Combat deal, because I was long gone by then, you guys got your Combat deal and you signed to Capitol. That was not a long period of time.
Right.
It really wasn't. And I think he just kind of flowed from one to the other. So the wound stayed gaping. And now, I mean, Metallica's huge. They're huge. And I think it isn't even so much the fact that they paid him and they give, because hell, I'm sure he gets checks to this day, you know. But they kind of took his sound away, you know. He sort of had to revamp everything he did. And anytime you have that traumatic an experience in your life, they took away his art, kind of. They sort of stole his art. And I don't know. I guess I understand why he's bitter about that. I really do. But as time goes on, you got to get past it.
You got to think that, like, you got to think that they had just signed with Megaforce.
Yeah.
They are just about to record Kill 'Em All. They send him home on a Greyhound. They fly in Kirk. We've heard No Life Till Leather. We know what the solos sound like. You know, I mean, Kirk didn't really change too much.
Right.
So I mean, you work your whole life to get the record deal, put out the record and everything else, and all of a sudden you're just shipped home, and they carry on with your songs, your solos, and end up becoming, you know, the biggest metal band of all time.
Yeah.
And it's easy for me to sit back, and I'm sure it's easy for you to sit back and go, but you wrote Rust in Peace, you know, Countdown to Extinction, like you did all this great stuff, but still, like, at the same time, you're like, but I didn't write Inner Sandman. You know, I can see where he can still be bitter, even though he, you know, put out great art over the years too.
Right. You know, and I think the thing, part of what drives me crazy about David, your situation there is Megadeth was always its best when you and Dave were working together.
Well,
it's true.
Dare I say, he and I are Megadeth, and to the degree that you were too, right? I mean, right? I mean, yeah. So let me ask you this. And again, just forest from the trees. You and I know where Dave was at. Yeah, obviously, I've always said, listen, man, I'm extremely thankful for Dave. I'm glad he was my big brother to me to help me learn how to live in I'm a kid from a farm, right? So I don't know how to fucking. Dave would kick people's asses on my behalf. You know what I mean? He would. He really would. He always had my back. He would protect me. He got me away from people that were bad, that were not good for me, and he was good about that, right? So, but you know, musically speaking, you know, we all know it's more than, you know, Dave hung his hat on his songs, right? And I read what little I've read of his book. It was hard for me to read, so I didn't read it, to be honest with you, his memoir.
I haven't either.
I know me coming back to the band helped kind of write the Scooby-Doo ending, you know, to use a Wayne's Worldism, because, you know, suddenly we're going to play the Big Four, and it's like, you know, there's got to be some sort of a happy ending to all that, right? And there was. And so I feel good about me coming back, sort of helped sort of police maybe a more diplomatic resolve to some of that stuff. But, you know, he talked always in there about his songs. They took my songs. You and I meet Dave, and you know what it's like to start anything at all, because you and I started a couple of bands and did it. We've then uprooted up from our bands. We moved to LA with Stars in Our Eyes. So it happens for real for us, right? With Dave.
Yeah.
But I guess my question is, you know, would Dave have ever done anything had you and I not landed at his doorstep?
Oh, man. I don't think Megadeth would have done what it did without you. I don't. I think there were times when you were running the rudder on that boat. And I think the two of you, look, I wasn't in long enough. Well, maybe I made a difference. I came up with the name. There's nothing else.
Right.
But
you got me in the band.
Came up with the name.
Yeah, me in the band.
Sort of. You kind of got yourself in there though, because if you'd have fallen on your face.
I know, but yeah. No,
I know what you mean. Yeah. But
because you look, and I say this like this, and again, this is in no way a dig on Dave. This is a reality of any of us, you know.
Nobody can do anything alone.
Look, exactly. No one can do anything alone. We saw who was around Dave at that time, because that was just kind of what was in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Those were the musicians who were there. You and I, again, some fortuitous, and I, you know, again, as a God-fearing man myself, you know, that instinct at 16, I got to get to LA. You and me convince our parents. We get out there, right? The stars line up, as they say, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, a religious person might say, if it's odd, it's God, right? So whatever sort of divine force you want to attribute to this, fate, good luck, God, whatever. You know, we drive out there, we move into an apartment right underneath this guy when he is at his most wounded. You know, remember David talked about it, he goes, yeah, I don't even know if I'm going to play music. I might just get into computers. Right. I might leave, right? And you and I think, probably kept kind of reeling him back. Are you fucking kidding me? Writing songs like that? You're not leaving the music business. You're not done, you know? And so, you know, the group effort of it all. And you're right. There are other outside influences to Dave, you know, that unfortunately, you know, are stronger than him, you know, and, you know, they have influenced some decisions and that is what it is, you know, but, you know, I think you and I were those influences at that time to get him back, you know, put the fucking gutters, you know, get the ball back down the alley and fucking hit the pins another time, you know, and you very much so. Cause like you said, even years later in Minneapolis, let's go kick this guy's ass. You were that guy. You were the guy that would sort of hold Dave's hair as he's puking. You know what I mean?
Literally.
That kind of thing. Literally. You know, and you were that guy. You had enough fucking testicular fortitude, as I heard a lawyer say one time. A lawyer or a manager friend of mine said that. In other words, you had enough balls to fucking, you know, to be Dave's running mate. You know what I mean? I was not a fighter guy like that, but you were, you know, and you and Dave could ride as two fucking brothers and you know, and that was good for Dave. He didn't have anybody like that, you know, and you were a wingman for him in those first few months because again, we met him probably 6 weeks after Metallica, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that was
if it was even that long. I mean, it wasn't long at all. And you know, I thank God all the time, and I try not to even tell my kids about the stuff I did when I was younger. But I was unafraid. Maybe I was stupid. I don't know, but yeah, that's true. And you talk about holding his hair. I'll never forget literally sitting on the curb on Sunset Boulevard outside of the Rainbow, holding Dave's hair. Yeah, calling a cab, holding him up, you know. Nice. And I was in no condition to be holding anybody up myself, you know. But yeah, there were times like that, and I mean, I think when it came to, I think Dave and I both had a sufficient streak of ornery in us, you know, to I mean, I kind of he and I ran around and did some fun, crazy stuff in clubs in Hollywood when I was out there. And I think, you know, kind of getting back to your original question, I think there's something to that idea that the three of us coming together at that point in time was kind of the Big Bang in a way. It's what set the whole thing in motion. And, you know, Dave never lacked for confidence. I don't think any of us really did. You don't lack for confidence. And I think when you bring all that together, there's energy, and there's I know for us, we knew that there was something special that was going to brew there. How far it was going to go, we didn't know for sure. To speculate where he'd have gone. Here's the thing. You know, Dave's kind of the reason Metallica got signed by Megaforce too, aside from the music. He was so off the rails. People would say, "Oh God, let's go see Metallica so we can see what Mustaine is going to say tonight, or what Mustaine is going to do." You know, so not only his music, but his personality, his fire, was what really drove them popular. I think I read something. I think Gary Holt did an interview recently where he said that it was Mustaine who people wanted to go see on the weekends. They would say, "Where are they playing? Let's go see what Mustaine's going to do." So, I mean, he already had that reputation aura about him. And then when he severed from Metallica, obviously he was still dialed in. He still had connections. He still knew people. You mentioned when Bailoff came down, I think it was Jeff Weller who came down with him.
Okay.
And when they came, because Bailoff stayed with us, and that dude was so awesome. Friendly. Oh, so friendly.
Yeah. And smoking weed like a little Buddha out of his bong. Dude, I just remember that. Yeah.
God, he was like the happiest dude. He always had a big grin on his face. I tell people he's kind of like looked like Fred Flintstone with long hair. So
he totally did.
God, what a great guy though, man. What a terrible loss. But so he was still tied in. And I remember when they came down, Dave spent a lot of time talking to Weller. And I think Weller was a manager or something too. He had like Lars Rocket. I think maybe he managed Exodus at the time. Yeah. So Dave he still had those connections. So I think he'd have gone somewhere. Whether it would have gone as far as Megadeth went, I don't know. I mean, that's hard to speculate on. But I think Ellefson and Mustaine is really the ticket that took Megadeth there. Because at times when he was just in his art, if you want to call it that, you were the one who kept that thing steady. You were the one who kept the business end of it steady. You were the one who kept things together, even when you were having, well, let's say post addiction. I think, kind of tripped.
But even in the addiction, for sure, I would.
Right. Yeah. So I mean,
you're right. Yeah.
Because that's what got you guys there, and I don't think it would have. I'm guessing, obviously, but I mean, I just don't think it would have gone as far as it went. I think the two of you took that to where it could be,
Nice. Real quick, David, I just emailed Prado. I told him we were running late. So
I told him the same thing. Yeah.
Okay, good.
We got a guy coming after this who wrote a Megadeth book. So that's why I thought this would be great to talk to you to get the real story, and then we'll.
I want to end on two quick things, and then David, you can. I will allow you to finish this up, David. I was kidding. No, but Greg, just quick thing on Megadeth. You see them obviously reach the heights that they do. Do you have regrets? Leaving and going back home and not sticking it out. And you're like, obviously, Mustaine sees Metallica go and do what they do, but you also have your thing where you see Megadeth go on and do what they do, and I'm sure you're happy for your friend, but at the same time, you're like, man, I could be doing that too.
I don't have any regrets. And I can say that because I believe that God has put me where I'm supposed to be right now. And everything around me is what's supposed to be here. My life has gone the way it's supposed to have gone. And I don't think if I would have stayed and tried to stick it out, I don't think I would have made it anyway, because I think Dave and I were I think Dave and I would have come. It wasn't a working relationship that would have been able to last. I don't think, just because I think that, like David said, we're both ornery. I was a puncher when I was in school, and I think Dave's the same way. And I think when you have that in the band, well, look at Oasis. I mean, not that bad, but I mean, I really don't. I mean, I look at it and I revel in it. And sometimes I crack up. It's my daughter, Shyla, who, by the way, just graduated from high school.
Nice. Congratulations.
She likes metal. She says thrash is the greatest form of music ever created. Right? So
you're welcome. You're welcome, Charlotte. Says
Greg. I know. Yeah. Well, she always says to me, Dad, you were part of this, and I'm like, well, a small part. But I think at times it's funny to me how close I brushed up against it. Because I'll be watching football on Sunday and Metallica will be on the bumper music at the stadium. You can hear it in the background. Like they're playing freaking Metallica or Megadeth. Yeah. They play Megadeth song. I'm like, that's my old band. Right. So in that sense, it's interesting to me all in life. I've done a lot of stuff, man. I was in the military for 10 years. I've got a doctorate in laws. I've got a Juris Doctorate. Now I'm an attorney, been an attorney for almost 25 years now. I've done a lot of shit. So do I look at what they've done, where they've gone, shows they've played? There's nothing like playing in front of a crowd. You can't describe it to anybody. The energy, how it feels, to be up there. So I look at some of the shows you guys have played, huge shows, venues we used to joke about, like Hammersmith. I'm like, yeah, David's played there now. Madison Square Garden, David's played there.
Yeah.
And, so I think about that stuff, and I'm like, man, it would be so cool to have experienced that energy. But I don't think regrets is the right word. I don't think regret is the right word, because I really don't feel that. I don't feel any sense of envy or jealousy. I just think it's pretty cool, because we came from this tiny little town in southern Minnesota, and the funny thing is, one of our classmates has a son named Sean Williams. The kid's a freaking amazing guitar shredder, and he's from Jackson. It's like, what in the hell is in the water down there? Because seriously, I mean, Sean played with us in Taz for that.
Our reunion at the fair, at the Jackson County Fair a couple years ago. Yeah.
Right. That kid can shred. I'd put him up on stage with anybody. Mm-hmm. And we're all from this tiny little town in southern Minnesota. How does that happen? And now we've got the #1 Division I football recruit in the state of Minnesota coming out of Jackson. Roman Voss isn't that name. He's going to play for the Gophers. He committed to the Gophers instead of Alabama. Wow. But now Jackson, now we got pro athletes coming out of this little town. So I don't know what's going on down there, but
good place to come from. Yeah,
I guess.
And then last thing is actually right before we got on this podcast, I went back and listened to an old podcast of mine where I interviewed the drummer from Kubla Khan, and we talked about the name situation. And it's funny because he goes, yeah, I think the guy's up there in Minnesota, blah, 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 like it. And I didn't put two and two together until I was talking to David a couple of months ago. And I was like, oh shit, like I've actually had this conversation like on the other side, because the band Snot had just had an issue with, there's a rapper named Snot, but he goes $NOT, but Limp Bizkit took him out on tour, so it made a really big confusion in like our world, because we're like, wait a minute, this is before Snot got back together and they're doing shows, but like, wait a minute, Snot's got back together, like, no, it's a different Snot, and blah 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 blah. But just that whole the issue with, Kubla Khan, they're kind of blowing up right now. Kubla Khan TX, those guys are making a name for themselves, but obviously, like the name that they're name that they're making for themselves. You had beforehand. So, you're good with coming up with names. I'll give you that for bands. But, I guess just kind of talk a little bit about, like, hey, when this band started to pop up, hey, wait a minute, guys, I own the, rights to that name or whatever.
Well, here's what happened. I actually started getting communications from friends of mine saying, dude, are you coming? Some guy asked me or sent me an email, said, are you guys coming through? You're going to play 4th and B in San Diego? I'm like, what? No. Right. Then I get another one. They're like, hey, are you playing here? And I'm like, no. That's how I even heard of them. Yeah. Right now, something strange had happened a few years before that. We had a Wikipedia page that then linked over, the Megadeth page linked over to our Wikipedia page at the time. And this is a long time ago now, but somebody went in there and hijacked it and redid the whole thing and mentioned the guy who is the founder of that band.
Okay.
Said he's the most brilliant something, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? So, So I wrote to Wikipedia and said, what the hell is going on? And basically they were like, hey, anybody can edit the pages, blah, blah, blah. If you got a problem for it. I was like, I just don't have time to stay on top of all that crap. So, but then people start contacting me and saying, hey, are you guys coming here? So I realized there's actual market confusion going on here. This isn't just, a perception or whatever. This is actual market confusion. People think this is us. So I reached out to them and they basically gave me the finger, and their fans are horrible. Horrible. I can't even begin to tell you how awful their fans are, and kind of makes me laugh because I get messages from these guys. I'm going to come. One of them said we did a show in Milwaukee, not that long after that. also turned out some promoter down in Florida was using our artwork to promote their shows as well.
Right.
So I get to say, "I want to come and kick your ass in Milwaukee," right? And the guy who was playing bass for us at the time, he was like, "I hope he shows up." You know?
So the way you talk, Greg, I think you were hoping he shows up too.
Well, kind of past all that, but
that's why you're a lawyer. You like to fight, dude. I think it's a perfect job.
Yeah. I don't mind butting heads a little, but so I go and I click through and I look at this guy's page and I see the picture of him and I'm like, dude, please, you do not want to come down to this show. It's like, but the vile shit, death threats, threatens to come and, come and kick your ass. And I got so much of that from their fans. Right. And every now and then somebody'd come in and say, "Hey, look, they had the name in 1985, man."
Right.
They had the name first. They win, period. End of story. Right.
Right.
And then I thought, well, I got to do something, but I didn't want to destroy them. I didn't want to stop them. And David, I talked to David when this was all going on too. And I think he gave me some pretty sage advice. He said, "Look, figure out a way to just make it go away calmly, quietly, because are you right?" And I think I'm paraphrasing now what you told me. He said, yeah, are you right? Yes. But even if you're right, you're going to be blackballed. Nobody's going to want to deal with you if you go through with this and you put your foot on their neck and kind of drive them crazy or something to that effect. You told me, look, you got to make a choice, whatever. So I got with another attorney buddy of mine here and, we worked with their lawyer down in Texas, and we worked out a settlement agreement, which they've breached numerous times. But
that's how that's how David's about to give you some advice when he starts with "look." He goes, "Look."
Yeah. Well, it was good advice,
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's kind of what went down with that. I haven't had any more contact with them. The guy that was their lawyer in Texas, I guess, isn't their lawyer anymore.
Yeah.
So, whatever.
That's how it goes.
It's all in the life. I mean, we still have a label. In fact, I want to give a shout out to my guy, Dmitro Blizno in Ukraine, in Kharkiv. He's managed to keep things going over there. I've done some business with him. He's got there's a couple of killer Ukrainian bands. He sent me this one band called Hell On. It's kind of, I don't know. I don't want to call them death metal, but they sort of have that sound, but they're a little symphonic, really good. He sent me this other band too called Xenotrone. That's more like a thrash prog band. Really good stuff. And they managed to keep it going. So, I mean, we still have stuff going on, but it's pretty much all over there now. So that what went down with those guys, all power to them. I hope they go on to great success. Good for them,
Yeah.
Moving on. Well, Greg, dude, thank you. We'll let you get back to the British Open, dude. This was awesome. I'm super glad you took an hour of your day. It was just fun fucking having this conversation. You and me have talked about this shit over and over, but you've got such a great, keen memory of shit that it's awesome, man. So it's really great. So anyway, we'll catch up again here soon. And
I want to leave you with one quick thing, really funny.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I got to move around a little bit to do this, but I just want to show this to David.
Your daughter's guitar. Dude, I rocked out on that guitar. I thrashed on that guitar. Greg just sent me a photo of us down on the steps of your house there when I was back in Mankato at one point, and we were rocking out together. So yeah.
Yep, my daughter. She was like 6 at the time.
Yeah.
Comes dragging that guitar down the stairs, and she stops next to him and she goes, "So David, want to jam?"
They do this,
David cracks up and says, "Sure, I'll jam with you." And then I got a picture of her where they're both staring at the camera. He's cracking up and her hand is like a blur. She's just shredding.
Awesome.
So, hey, thanks for having me, David.
Yeah.
Josh,
welcome.
great to meet you. Awesome
Yeah.
conversation. You guys are awesome.
All right. See
Good
ya.
times. Good
Talk to
times.
you soon, bro.
See you,
Love you.
Bye. Love you too, man. Bye.